Good morning, Jeremy.
Now, this morning, I understand you want to talk about Lake Pertobe, which has been in the news a bit lately, of course, for some saddish reasons, I suppose, with dead ducks and so on.
Yes, but apart from dead ducks, that's really the first bit of bad press Lake Pertobe's had for quite some time.
Yes.
But for the first 150 or so years of the town, it was all bad, the news about Lake Pertobe.
Oh,
so
right.
It's only recently we've come to love Lake Pertobe. And so I'm sure the duck problem will subside once we get a bit of rain.
Yeah, indeed. So where does Lake Pertobe start then? Because I'm presuming it wasn't always the way it looks now.
No, I can remember when it looked pretty bad and it smelled even worse. So Lake Pertobe originally would have just been a very shallow lake open to the sea most of the time.
Right.
If we go back a few thousand years, the Warrnambool's built on a series of old sand dunes, but even when first Europeans arrived, that area down there was very swampy, and there was only a very narrow sand bit where we now talk about, the Lady Bay Beach, and early photos show absolutely no vegetation on that sand spit, so it's fairly recent.
Right.
And the original waterline, a few thousand years ago, would have been at the bottom of the escarpment. So Lake Pertobe and the whole South Warrnambool area was very swampy. And
Which has to make you wonder, why did they sort of choose to settle that in the first place? Obviously, there was something that was...
Governor Latrobe sends William Pickering to Warrnambool to choose a site for the town because there are cattle owners and overlanders moving into the area, and they want a market for their cattle, so they need a port.
Right, okay.
And so the very reason Pickering chooses to site Warrnambool up the hill where he does put it is because that area down near the port's swampy, and as we know, it wasn't the most suitable site for a port. There were always problems with the port, mainly to do with the rivers and the coastline. But when they do put it there, the passengers come in, they're unloaded onto a jetty near where the current pavilion is, a bit to the east of that, and then they've got the long trek up to town by bullock cart. Through they have to go round this swamp area, so they go round the back of that or the town side, and they end up coming up the escarpment somewhere down near where the flume is. So it was a very long trek into town.
Yeah, right.
And
which now you think, that's quite a scenic route, but then it probably wasn't.
Now. But in winter time, that was a shallow lake. In summertime, it would have dried out, and then therefore it would have smelt fairly horrible. And
Welcome to Warrnambool.
Imagine in the middle of winter being offloaded from a boat into a smaller boat, rowed ashore into this desolate wilderness.
Gee, people must have thought, what are we doing?
Yeah, and though as the town starts to develop from the 1840s up on Pickering's grid, there are then problems start to emerge with the lake being so close and being dried out and muddy in summertime. And from about the 1860s, it's linked to all sorts of health problems, and the Examiner newspaper's full of reports from medical officers saying, we've got to do something about the lake. It smells foul, it's not navigable, it's not, you can't go round it or through it, and there were all sorts of problems also associated with runoff from the town, because the town wasn't sewered, so you've got night soil being washed, coming through the streets and through the drainage down the hill and into the lake.
Lovely.
So yeah,
Good.
It's associated with disease, and a lot of the visiting medical officers were recommending, recommended the establishment of the town baths, to try and improve the hygiene of the town.
Oh, right. Okay.
And also, the first baths are built on the edge of the lake, so they're probably contributing to the problem as well.
Gee. Which is probably not uncommon, I would have thought, maybe for a lot of towns,
Exactly.
coastal towns at that time would have been in the same situation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So there are various schemes promulgated to try to overcome this, and they some people wanted to dig the lake out and make it deeper and make it into a proper harbour. Thought that was a good idea. Other people wanted it filled in. the meat preserving works that was built on the site of the where the woolen mill later was. They wanted it filled in because they then thought they could increase their land size and presumably use it for cattle grazing. So they had a bit of a plan to do that before the council, but that business only lasted 3 years, and for other reasons the business folded and that never went ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the 1920s, there are still a lot of schemes being put up and a lot of complaints, and it's pretty much a permanent headline in newspapers, but none of these schemes ever got off the ground. And in 1924, there was a call for a public meeting to discuss a new scheme, which was quite radical. They wanted to, and a lot of, we've got the signatures of the people who signed the petition to form the public meeting, and they wanted to make it into a proper harbour by cutting through the beach into a big channel in there so that shipping could sail into this deepened lake.
Right, gee.
And they also had planned to extend Gillis Street over the railway line and down into the middle of this. So a pier would run off the end of Gillis Street right out into the middle of the lake where ships would tie up.
Gee,
now,
which would be a major, a major undertaking, wouldn't it?
There was a map associated with it which shows the detail of this. It's just a hand-drawn mud map, but it's really interesting to think, well, if that had gone ahead, and there's a lot of the really movers and shakers in town, the businessmen were behind this plan.
Yeah.
We probably would have no beach today. Lady Bay certainly wouldn't look like it does now with a shipping channel through the middle of it.
Yeah.
By the 1960s, they decided to pump seawater in there to keep it from drying out in summer, and that's when it's about the same time as the ski club was being formed. It originally used Lady Bay near the breakwater. But then, when this proposal happened, they moved to Lake Pertobe, and I can remember as a young child learning to ski on Lake Pertobe. And
this is water skiing we're talking about, of course.
Yes. That would have been a good proposal if they'd frozen it. That would have been
a giant outside skating rink. Imagine
it was all right skiing on Lake Pertobe as long as you didn't fall in, because then when you fell in, you had about a metre of water and then another half metre of solid mud, or not solid mud underneath
mud
that.
that you sunk into.
And you only ever wore your very old bathers because it was very muddy and you ended up very sort of brown.
It's still very shallow.
Yes.
So, yeah. But deep enough to allow that to take place.
It was then, I think it's a little bit shallower now.
Yeah.
But because it was one big open lake then.
Right, okay.
So it was deeper in the middle.
And was it very popular, or did a lot of people do that? Was there a lot of, sort of motorboats and so on? And
it was a small club, but there would have been some days there would have been 10 boats maybe using it. Yes.
Yeah, right.
So they had a circuit.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until 1975 that really they solved the problem, when the then city engineer Johnny Johnson put forward a plan to the council to it's called the Lake Pertobe Wildlife and Tourism Development Scheme, and that was the beginnings of the park that we see today. And so the Historical Society has early photos of that development taking place, where the islands are being formed, and there are a couple of swings and some little domes and hills and hollows in the landscape, but absolutely no trees, and from there it's developed into the beautiful recreational parkland that we see today.
Right, yeah. Fascinating. Well, Janet, thank you very much. I'll be a lot more appreciative of Lake Pertobe in future now.
Thank you.